full of outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hi Brent, how are you?
Good evening, Paul. So we've got a County Down special tonight. We've got two Irishmen and two sets of glasses. So
we do indeed, yeah, we do indeed. But here, talking about County Down, I have a bone to pick with you. You were here last week, and do you know what I think you did, Brent? What? I think you took all the weather with you. Is there any chance we could have even a little bit of sunshine back?
Oh man, it was nice. There was a couple of days of sunshine.
You had a good spell here.
There was a mist, and there was that lazy day of like 12 degrees with the mist hanging low. And I love those days. And the thing is that's why C.S. Lewis based in Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe just around the corner from where I grew up, because it does look a bit, Game of Thrones was filmed not too far between you and I as well. So it has that atmospheric theme to it, which was really, really good. But watching the Olympics as well, obviously enjoying some of the Irish Olympics and some highlights. The synchronized swimming I watched that tonight. That is freaking me out.
Yeah.
Do you see the synchronized swimming?
Do you know that fella? He's on Instagram now, and he has this tagline, "I'm delicious." Have you seen him?
No.
I'll send you the link. He's Irish and so on. But look, he did some research, and he did this pro rata thing. If you take the medals by, population, Ireland is actually coming third. Isn't that fantastic?
It is. And one of the nice things about it is that you've seen the North and the South and the whole Team Ireland thing. I think that's quite relevant to what's been going on the last couple of weeks, this idea of community, this idea of people working together. But you've actually seen both Team Ireland and Team GB. You've got members of the North on the Team Ireland winning medals and members of the North on the Team GB and NI. It was always interesting when my own daughter was like, England's doing well at the Olympics, and I had to do the geography teacher daddy. England's not in the Olympics. Yes, it is. No, it's not even the United Kingdom. It's Team GB and NI, which is quite specific. But it led to a lot of questions of what's the difference between Team GB and NI. And poor Rory's always stuck in the middle, isn't he? Of like, why is Rory, golfing for Ireland? Well, because he golfed as an amateur, really. So it always leads to awkward questions, but actually it's just really good to see. The most awkward question was Daniel Whiffen, because was he from County Down or County Armagh? Apparently he's taken the Armagh side. It's probably because of the one in Ireland.
Well, you see, you wrote that in a tweet or something. And the next thing is, my wife, who's from County Armagh, well, she couldn't get in touch with you, so I got it in the ear. Yeah, sorry about that. She thinks he's from County Armagh, so.
Yeah, well, your borders where we come from do go fluid. So tonight we have Daniel Kebedy coming on, and obviously two big sort of headlines this week in education is the 5.5% pay deal that seems to be on the table, and the NEU seems to be wanting to endorse that. So we've got Daniel coming on to discuss. The question is, why should teachers accept that pay deal when you see the junior doctors, for instance, getting a lot more than that? And, we are in the middle of a pay and recruitment and retention crisis. So, that's we need the explanation for that. And I've had a lot of my friends say, what's happening now with pay and conditions? What's happening? What's going to happen next? So hopefully Daniel will help explain to us, I think, the next steps when it comes to the pay deal, and the next steps when it comes to where we are as regards what he would consider to be the first stage. And I'm keen to find out where we go with this, because we went on strike, what happens next. So Daniel hopefully will explain that to us. And then our second story, would you like to explain our second story and Mr. Pink?
Our second story is Matt Pinkett, who's very popular on Twitter. And he's going to be helping us work out what schools should be doing in relation to riots and what happens when everybody goes back to school. Very topical at the minute, very, very important. And we hope he's going to be able to help us think through some of the things that we should be doing. I think we might also be able to speak to Daniel maybe a little bit about that. I know the NEU have said a few things, so maybe we'll get his expertise and insight on that as well.
I think,
so an exciting show lined up.
Yeah. Yep. Hi, Daniel.
Good evening. How are you both?
Not too bad, and thank you. Holidays, you're on your holidays, so thanks for preparing during your holiday season. Have you any nice planned or?
Oh, do you know what? Brent? So today is my first day of leave because it's been a bit intense. And do you know what? I just want to stop at home for a couple of weeks. That is all I want to do. I just want to stop at home. I don't want to go anywhere. I want to be in my pajamas as long as I want. I cannot be doing with the stress of travel or a holiday. I just want to be at home. I hope you're both having a good summer, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. I just came back. I had a school trip to, I went to Borneo with a school group, which just finished in the day that we finished school. And then I've been home to see the folks, which are just around the corner from Paul. And then I'm off to Spain in a couple of days as well. So you need the holidays, you need to recharge the batteries. So, but thank you for appearing, because I know it's good that you are. So if you just want to put the graphic, Hannah, this is what you sort of tweeted out about the 5.5% pay award. 1.2%, 2 billion to funding. Is it a correction? No. Is it a step in the right direction? Yes. Is the award funded? Yes. Keegan abdicated, Phillipson funded. No barbs in that comment whatsoever. But it was our members engaging the pay up campaign and through the indicative ballot, they fully funded. So you are crediting the strike action and saying that strike action works. However, you're also saying it's a step towards a correction and fixing the recruitment and retention crisis, and you finish with more to be done. So there's a second quote there. Just if you put the next one up there, Hannah. So that's all credit to the Secretary of State. Keegan received the independent review body report and left. Fair enough. Phillipson funded the 5.5%. The performance-related pay is gone. PPA can be taken home. There's a reset in the relationship between us and the government. And then you've obviously quoted in Bridget Phillipson. So my big question to you, somebody who you and I spoke privately about this, and you know what side of the fence I was on. I was on the, no, let's not give in. Let's keep striking until we... I was in the junior doctor side of this. I would have kept going and going, but that's me. It's in my nature. And I know there are people like me saying it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to push back. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get everybody together. Why should you convince me to accept this 5.5 when deep down I'm thinking to myself, nah, the junior doctors got it right. We should be getting more. So convince me.
So I completely respect your position, Brent. That's my starting point. The fact of the matter is teacher pay and support staff pay has been eroded over the last 14 years. We all recognise that. The average teacher is 25% worse off, or was 25% worse off in real terms since 2010. I understand the desire to push for a complete correction. When I got elected as General Secretary, I put forward a strategy of incremental gains over the course of a parliament where we made year-on-year improvements on the issue of teacher pay, but school staff pay more broadly. It is not an underestimation or an exaggeration to say that it was our strike action last year and our willingness to show that we were prepared to do it again that shifted the STRB to make the first inflation plus pay award in a long time. We mustn't underestimate what the 5.5% actually means. We've got to be honest about it. There have been 4 big pay awards since 1974. Where we've had a significant above inflation pay award. This is one of them. It is down to members showing willingness to fight again. Now, I was the president the year before our dispute, and I led the delegation to the STRB. I said to them, look, if you don't give us an inflation plus pay award, there'll be strike action. And they laughed us off. They thought, you'll never get through the strike thresholds. And then what did we end up with? 8 days of action. We saw the 6.5% pay award but it was at a time when inflation was out of control. This year, we went to the STRB and we said, look, we need an inflation plus pay award, or there will be strike action. Here is our indicative ballot. 90% of members on a turnout of over 50% have voted yes to take strike action. And we have now got a pay award that is, inflation is around 2.5%, so three percentage points above inflation, not a single day of strike action. It isn't a correction, but it is that step in the right direction. Now, we would say that, we need, a 25% pay rise. NFER, which is very reputable, say it's about 16% that's needed. IFS say 9%. So depending on what you look at, it is a step towards getting pay restoration and correction. And we haven't taken a day of strike action this year, but we have shown a readiness to. I understand that people would like to see junior doctors pay award on that scale, but we need to break down what they got for this year. So for this year, they've got 6% plus £1,000 non-consolidated. They got an extra 9% added onto last year's 4% because they haven't settled last year's dispute. So if you're looking at this year, there's not a great difference between the junior doctors deal and our deal on this year. But of course, they're getting an extra 9% onto last year's pay award. It's not to be sniffed at. But you also got to recognise the junior doctors, I think in total, have taken 44 days of strike action. They are a different profession. So when we take strike action, we all have to go off, and we were all off in those days of strike action. There's no opportunity for us to then do extra shifts to make back money lost in pay. There is no rotoring. So, the way rotors work. So it is just a different industrial environment and landscape that has enabled them to take 44 days of industrial action. Now, if we want a junior doctor style deal, then I'm sure we have to recognise that to do that would take significant amount of industrial action. Significant amount.
And I accept. I do accept that. Yes, Paul, go ahead. Yeah.
Daniel.
Yeah.
How you doing? Paul here. Another Northern Irish accent for you this evening. Yeah. You're being well treated. Unfortunately, Daniel, I'm teaching nearly as long as going back to the 70s. Not quite, but nearly as long. So, I'm very hard by a lot of these real pay cuts,
Yeah.
And I mean, Pat Roach talked about, and this was pre-July 2022, talked about teachers being £40,000 worse off. And inflation since then has hit 11, 12, 13, 14%. So, we really, really are very hard hit. Now, I like a lot of things that are in that 5.5% offer, and I like a lot of the human things. But listen, can you tell me this? In agreeing to that 5.5%, have you not lost a lot of your bargaining chips now? Why should a government say for the next term of Parliament, yeah, we'll listen to them?
Well, I've been really clear with the Secretary of State that we need to see a correction over the course of the Parliament, and we really want to work with the government to enable that so that we can achieve it without a single day of strike action, because that none of us teachers want to be in school. I've been working with the NEU colleagues in the NEU about developing a Houghton style commission. 1974, there's the Houghton Award. So if you were teaching in 1974, you'll remember a very substantial pay award.
I'm not that old now, come
on. So
1984 maybe.
So in 1973. Yeah, in the early 70s, we had a very similar period. We had runaway inflation, we had a recruitment and retention crisis, we had a series of teacher strikes. And in 1974, there was a change of government. The incoming Secretary of State for Labour established what was called the Houghton Commission. It's an independent commission that made recommendations within 12 months to correct the crisis and bring an end to the series of strikes that have been happening. I think it was 28% in England, 29% in Scotland was the pay award that year. So speak to any teachers of that period, that they will remember the Houghton Award. You know, it's a spectacular thing. Now we all hear the discourse coming from Rachel Reeves and so on, and no, I think I am under no illusions that the public finances are in a difficult state. So we would want to, I hope, see an independent commission established by Bridget Phillipson into the status of the teaching profession, that seeks to correct the recruitment and retention crisis, that corrects pay, that makes further recommendations around workload, PRP no longer being compulsory and PPA being able to be taken at home as significant wins that have come out of this recent round of negotiations. But we must go further. But also we need to see greater flexibility injected into the profession. You know, graduates are now entering an employment environment where they can work a number of days a week at home. They have huge amounts of flexibility in their lives. That is not easily applicable in teaching. So there has to be some financial compensation for that if we want to see, the brightest and the best graduates still enter the profession. So I'm really hoping, and I haven't had confirmation yet, but I've seen leaked DFE documents sent, publicised, have come across the desk of TES apparently, and there's been some publication around the government establishing an independent commission into recruitment, retention, the status of the profession. We recognise where we are, but we absolutely do want to see. Yeah.
Can I just tie you down on this? Okay.
Yeah. This
5.5% isn't even being covered in this financial year, okay? There are 7/12 of it being covered in this year, with the remainder being covered in the following year. Have you thrown in your bargaining chip? You have nothing left to bargain with. Isn't that real?
No, I really don't believe that. We are a highly organised union. Everybody recognises that. We people thought we'd never get through the indicative pressure, a ballot once. We got through it twice. We've done another indicative ballot. We are a campaigning, organising union. We want to work with government to ensure that there is the correction that we need to see in teacher pay over the course of the Parliament. And there will be a real, we will use our industrial muscle. Should we not, ever end up on a direction of travel where that is not occurring? That when Keir Starmer was in NATO, there was the talk of the STRB reports and the pay review body reports from other public sector bodies, and he said he was asked, will unions get what they want? His response to that was no. My response in the media that weekend was, well, that would be highly inflammatory, that would be highly problematic, needs to be implemented and it needs to be funded, or we'd be on a negative direction of travel that we all want to avoid. We've now got it not only implemented but funded, and we will engage.
Sorry, Daniel, that's a point I do want to make, and I've just put up a couple of tweets there. And we were hoodwinked before about funding. There was a shortfall, and going back to the previous administration, they had a clever accounting, didn't they, of how the pay deal wasn't completely fully funded, and that was always a red line for us. Yeah. And here's the question, and I'm putting it out there, and I suppose you might not know the answer, but this is how some of the media portrayed this. Do you trust that this is fully funded? Where is the actual money coming from? And are we, as I've seen a lot of social media saying, we're taking granny's heating money to pay for teachers. Do we think the money is there? And you talked about the precarious financial situation of what we could be heading towards another austerity. And to back up what Paul has been suggesting there is this as much we're going to get? This is it now. We've got our pay deal. Thank you very much, teachers. Go back in your little box, and that's you off the list now. we've given you what you need, and then move on. Is that really where we're heading, do you think?
So we've got an additional 1.2 billion and funding from the Treasury. Now, we sent papers, we've been running the school cuts campaign for a significant period of time now. Our data people were working on the figures that were required, and so were the IFS, and they were saying an injection of funding north of 1 billion. We put 1.2, and we have now got that commitment. And then I just want to quote you something, because the funding covers the financial year for 24 to 25, but the government have yet to decide that the funding for 25-26, as you said, but they have made this commitment that we will take into account the impact of the full year's cost of the teacher pay award on schools when considering 25-26 budgets, which are yet to be agreed. The important thing for us really was that the support that we knew we know that the support staff pay award will also impact on school funding. So we calculated that cost to be, just let me bring it up. I brought some notes onto me here. So yeah, 850 million. So that was where we needed, the real extra funding. And so we had, So the one point.
Sorry, to answer, you are satisfied and happy that this is incremental extra money that has been pumped into education from the government treasury, that we're not going to, because that's the massive thing for us, is as teachers, we do not want to be responsible for school budget problems, because we know what happens. The schools have 80% of their money goes towards staffing, doesn't it? And given the large cost, we don't want school budgets itself. We need more than 1.2 billion. We need 15 billion for the estates alone to bring them back up to date. Never mind. So this is a start, really. But my point is this creative accounting? Is this real money? And the big question is, where is it coming from? Are they coming out with savings? Because that's what we've heard as well about Department of Education savings, and that worries me when you hear the word savings and efficiency, because we know what that means. That means cuts, doesn't it?
Yeah. So there was no fact. My understanding is there's no savings to be found inside the DFE. But you make a really important point, and this is what's really important when we talk to the profession. And I think there was an issue with this last year when we settled around 6.5. So we all are aware of severe funding constraints and pressures in school and in education. We know that, over the last, 14 years, we've seen school funding eroded, so that 70% of schools now have, less funding in real terms than they did in 2010. We are satisfied that the extra £1.2 billion will fund the support staff and teacher pay award for this period. However, what it will not do is mitigate against the wider problems in school funding more broadly. What it does mean is that teachers can have their pay award this year without further detriment to education provision. But we're not going to see that investment in education that we all need to see. So there will still be budgetary pressures. Absolutely, there will be, because the fact of the matter is, we used to spend well in excess of 5% of GDP on education pre-2010. In 2008, 2009, the Labour government was investing around 5.7% of GDP in education. We are now spending 3.9% of GDP on education. That gap between 3.9 and 5% of GDP on education, the OECD average, 1.1%, is 20 billion. We are not going to see an alleviation of funding pressures on schools, whether it's a school estate, whether it is in SEND, and so on, until we see that sort of cash injection. So we're going to be raising our campaign will be primarily focused now on investment in education. However, you can all be confident that your 5.5% is not going to come at further detriment to education.
I think that's
so. I think that's
really important point. Yeah, that is, isn't it? Because we don't want people to pay Paul, don't we? We don't want to be in that situation.
That's right. And I think there was, and last year, last year, if I'm being really honest, I felt that we weren't clear enough. That this is funding for the pay. That doesn't mean that things are necessarily going to be financially better in your school setting.
Yeah,
we are even more confident this year.
We're going to move on quickly. Quick fire, 30-second answers. Wheels, TAs, and further education. So where are they?
Yeah.
Is the
Wales
5.5? Yeah.
We are pressing them to. Pressing them to. On FE, so on FE, we are going to be balloting in some schools. We had our special executive last week. Now the government have committed to funding academised sixth form colleges on a similar basis to schools. So we're expecting similar. However, they've not made a similar commitment to non-academised sixth form colleges. Now this could just be an oversight, and we think it would cost only about 5 million to correct. We're hoping that does get sorted. But should there not be that same level of commitment for non-academised sixth form colleges, then we are going to be starting to ballot those colleges. Broadly, in the other areas of FE, where we're often not the largest union, as UCU, I'm committed to working very closely alongside them around ensuring there's no underinvestment. On support staff, now I want to see an inflation plus pay award for support staff. There's been a flat rate awarded of around £1,200. Now, it is well known that we, as the NEU, are not around the bargaining table for support staff pay. There are 3 unions: Unite, GMB, Unison. Unison are the largest, GMB second largest, Unite smaller representation. NEU have over 60,000 members in support staff. We're not around the bargaining table when it comes to pay. Hopefully when Bridget Phillipson establishes the Triple SMB, that will change. We are certainly asking for that to happen. 2 of the 3 unions have rejected the offer for support staff pay, and are planning to ballot in certain areas. I've written to them to those unions saying that we want to support you and ballot in those areas too. It is absolutely imperative that we see an improvement in the terms and conditions of our support staff colleagues over the long term. NEU support staff members deserve to have their voice heard around the bargaining table. I'm committed to ensuring that can happen. As you know, we need other unions to agree to that, and that's not always easy, but we are committed to working with other unions, because that's vitally important, professional unity to improve our lot for our members. So that's where we are honestly in those areas. But I think everybody who is a member of the NEU can be incredibly proud of what we've achieved this year. It's no mean feat. That 5.5% pay award, as I said, is one of the biggest since 1974 in real terms. It is not a correction, but we are on the path to recovery, and we really want to work with the new government on doing that. I think it is fair to say we are having a much more productive relationship with government than we ever did over the last 14 years. So that is really welcome shift.
I do want to. Right, here's how this goes, because I do want to ask you about last night, and I think it'd be remiss of us if we didn't, obviously, with the current context of everything that's happening. And are you proud of, if you just put up, got a tweet, are you proud of the members of the NEU who have been out protesting?
Absolutely.
So you're proud with the NEU members teaching members who have been out in the streets and protested last night. What about the members of the NEU protesting Palestine and protesting and other sort of political things? Is there a danger of the NEU losing members or being accused of taking a side, which is part of the kind of situation? Because a lot of my colleagues have been saying to me, what are we going to go back into a school? We're going back into a school where we've got lots of division and we have a union that's taking a side there, isn't it? But you're saying unity is a key. But when you're saying unity is a key, there are members of the Jewish community who are saying, you know, they don't want to feel that they'll feel welcome in the NEU because the NEU is seemingly supporting the Gaza side of the conflict. How do you respond to those critics? How do you respond to those individuals who are saying the union's got too political, the union's got involved in all of these things when the union should be out of that? And equally, how do you sort of protect our members if they are out protesting and they are out there? How are they when they go back into their communities? Are they not vulnerable when they're back in those communities to people then accusing them of not being impartial?
So let me be really clear. I do not care what your opinion is on the situation in Gaza or Israel. Well, regardless of your view, you are welcome in this union. That is the point of being in a union, that there is a diversity of opinion. Now, we do have democratically agreed positions on solidarity with Palestine. Those have come through the National Conference for very many years, but you are welcome in our union if you disagree with it, and you are more than welcome to argue against it and bring alternative policy on a whole host of issues. Now, in terms of anti-racism and combating the far right, that sort of runs through me like a stick of rock. When I was a teacher, I was, organising against the BNP, the EDL, the National Front, National Action, a lot of them. That's why I won the Blair Peach Award back in 2017. I have a long history in that, but so does our union as well. Our union stands in the tradition of Blair Peach, a teacher who was, killed by the police at a demonstration against the National Front. Now, anti-racism has to be fundamental to is fundamental to our trade union. And again, I will stand with the Muslim community, regardless of whatever their views could be on a whole host of issues when the far right come for them. I will stand with the Jewish community, regardless of whatever their views are on a whole host of issues, because whatever somebody thinks on anything when the far right come for them, because I'm an anti-racist and I'm an anti-fascist. And that's what I fundamentally believe and is central to our union. So I was absolutely, you're right, proud to see that huge anti-racist demonstration all around the country in towns and cities last night. Because the reality is there have been children who have been terrified this week about what is going on in their communities through the far right rioting, and it has been fascist-led violence. Not everybody who's been getting involved in it has been, of the far right, but it has been far right coordinated, and it has caused terror in our streets and in our communities. And you're right, we have to be able to have space in our schools to bring communities back together, but also educate children around the dangers of far right activism and the problems of racism. I've always believed, right, racism is used by the powerful people in our society to divide Black people and white people, Muslim people and Jewish people, with the sole aim of keeping everyone down. That's why it's contrary to trade union values. I'm sorry if I'm going on.
No. You're preaching to the choir on this. You know that.
Yeah.
But the problem is we have a large union, which at the moment represents such a broad spectrum, a broad church of individuals. And we are in a very precarious position. Paul and I both know this, coming from where we come from, the them and then thus. And we are open to criticism when members of our union are, seemingly getting involved in political campaigns, which there are multiple interpretations. I myself am a political candidate, union representative, Teachers Talk Radio. I walk a fine line. We know the line that we walk as teachers. We have to be above reproach. But when I'm going back into a community that is divided, I have to stand in front of a class, and parents have to trust that I, as a teacher, am impartial. So that's my point. When we're saying that we have teachers out there who are campaigning and protesting, is there a risk that not only we're putting them in danger, but actually that the union is getting too politicized? Because there's always people saying, what's the point? Well, why is the union getting involved in this? Why is the union getting involved in that? Surely the union is more about looking after the welfare of teachers. And that's what worries me, is that I'm seeing an increase in spurious claims, teachers who are getting attacked because people now know which side of the fence. And again, Paul can back me up on that. The side of the fence you're on, you're one of them, one of us. And that really concerns and worries me as a teacher, that people are calling into question our professionality, our neutrality, our impartiality. I mean, how would you think that we go about the start of the year? How do we go about the start of the year? We've got Mr. Pink come on. It's the last question I'm going to ask, because Mr. Pink's in the background here, and he's going to talk about toxic masculinity. How do we protect our members, therefore, from claims of they are, wokey, lefty, guardian, wokerati kind of teachers? Because there is that trap, is there not, Daniel, waiting for us?
So I don't know if this is my connection, but I have not been able to hear lots of that, but I've caught the gist.
Yeah.
And I think I've caught the gist. I view members partaking in anti-racism demonstrations last night as central to protecting our broader membership. I know Muslim teachers who've been followed home from school by gangs of youths from their school recently. I know a young Muslim woman who has been spat at, and a member who has been spat at, on her way home from work. These are, the idea that anti-racism is too political is highly problematic. Actually, I don't think that is a legitimate position, because we have currently an environment where, you're right, there is absolutely lots of division out there at the moment, and that has been fueled by irresponsible rhetoric from politicians. It has been fueled by the Daily Mail and all sorts, who've been celebrating these anti-hate marches in the last 24 hours.
Fine irony.
I think we might have lost Daniel, have we?
I lost Daniel, yeah. Ice frozen.
I have.
All right, shall we
This show is brought to you in partnership
Am
with
I freezing?
Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world.
I think I'm back. Are you
John
back?
Cat have an exceptional collection of book titles that cover a range of educational
Hello?
topics, ideas, and research. The books are aimed at forward-thinking
Can you hear me?
schools and support best practice teaching for both primary and secondary education.
Shall I leave?
Level up your professional development today and visit johncatbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order.
Hello.
Oh, Daniel's still there. And there's Matt. Hi, Matt.
Hi, how you doing? You all right?
Daniel meet Matt. Matt meet Daniel. Actually,
Hi, Daniel.
I was going to say, Daniel's more than welcome to dovetail in if he wants to dovetail into some of this conversation as well.
Definitely is, but he's just gone again.
It dovetails nicely in, because obviously that's what I wanted to lead into that, and we couldn't have obviously the head of the NEU, not on and not talk about obviously what the elephant in the room is what the last couple of days have been, which have been quite traumatic, haven't they? And quite dramatic and quite sort of interesting. I mean, as a history teacher, somebody teaches this, I think there'll be stuff in the textbooks in maybe a couple of years on this. It could be a defining moment, and it could be one of those moments where things are pulled back or things could get worse. So It's interesting. So this is what we came to with Mr. Pink, positive teacher. If you're in a school affected by the area of the riots and you'd like me to come and deliver a free student workshop session on toxic masculinity to students, let me know in the DMs. It's not much, but I know it's something I got in my locker and it could do some good. And I really sort of followed the thread on that. There was so many people saying, yes, we're in this area. We're in this area. We'd love to have you in. And that just obviously prompted us to have a little chat with you about, you know, the idea of, well, how would toxic masculinity help combat this situation? So what do you deliver? What do you offer? And how could that help sort of prevent any sort of riots situations or these kind of situations escalating in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, I don't claim to be anybody that's able to prevent rioting. But certainly I do think that I'm able to go into schools and actually talk to boys about toxic masculinity. Since I put that tweet out, which you've got up on the screen there, I've had nothing but stick from. I've had lots of support and lots of people saying, "Yeah, we love you in," and that's great. But also all the usual kind of weirdos saying things like, you know, it's people like you that are making boys feel rubbish about themselves. You know, you shouldn't be using the phrase toxic masculinity. It's really damaging, blah, 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 all that rubbish. What I would say to the people that think that it's wrong of me to talk about toxic masculinity with boys is you're really underestimating boys. You know, boys aren't these empty vessels who just take in, you know, boys are able to think critically. When I go into schools, and what I'll be doing when I go up to Liverpool and where the riots were, and I'll be talking, I won't be going into school saying, right, lads, men are toxic, you're all horrible. What I'll be talking about is we'll be looking at the language, we'll be talking about the word, we'll be thinking about the ways that actually, yes, certain aspects of masculinity are toxic. There are things that men are more likely to do than women are that are toxic, that are harmful. We're more likely to commit sexual harassment. We're more likely to rape. We're more likely to kill ourselves. We're more likely to perpetrate violence. These things are fundamentally toxic and harmful, not just to women, but to men themselves, you know? And actually, my experience is when I go into these schools and I talk to kids about it, they love it. They want to talk about it. They want to understand themselves and the way that they've been gendered better. And I feel that the work I do enables kids to do that.
That's interesting, Matt, because although Daniel's gone now, his union has called on Labour's curriculum review to look at these social issues, these really urgent social issues, and really include them in the curriculum. Do you think you're filling a gap in the curriculum? Is there something missing and you're just there at an opportune moment to step in?
I absolutely think that given masculinity's grip on violence, given masculinity's grip on politics, given masculinity's grip on society in general, that absolutely kids need to have some sort of formal tuition or teaching on gender and gender politics and gender and the way it functions in our world. Absolutely, I agree that that's something that needs to happen. Researchers said that a third of girls in secondary schools will be sexually harassed during their time at school. A quarter of those girls will be physically sexually harassed during their time at secondary school. Of the girls over a third of girls who are sexually harassed during their time at school, only 14% of those will actually report it to a teacher. 86% will just stay quiet.
Why is that? Do we know why that is, Matt?
I think that in reality, many boys are committing sexual harassment and they don't realise that what they're doing is sexual harassment. They think it's just kind of flirty behaviour or just boys will be boys. I also actually think that there's a problem in that most teachers don't actually understand what sexual harassment is. And so it's happening all of the time. And
we have
we
have an expression in Northern Ireland, Matt, and it runs along the lines of they didn't just lick that up off the floor, which kind of means, you know, they haven't just kind of copped on to this right now. Where are these toxic influences coming from? Because they don't just turn up on Monday morning and suddenly switch to being toxic.
No.
Where are these negative influences coming from to affect all our young males so badly?
But they've always been there. Toxic men have always been there, you know, and I'm speaking as somebody, you know, we've all been gendered a certain way. I've been a toxic man myself. You know, they've always been there. The thing is now is that obviously you have the internet, you know, which helps. But also what we also have to accept is that the most powerful people in society, and I'll be straight with you, namely white men, have also, although they are still, and many of them forget this, they are still the most powerful people in society, the most privileged people in society, but also they've never had less power. You know, 50 years ago, all you had to do was put on a suit, go to work, grope the secretary's backside, tell a few sexist jokes with the boys in the office, go home, be a bit horrible to your wife, you know, make her cook you dinner, and you got paid more for doing all that, you know, and all you had to do was be born with a penis. But rightly so, now, because of things like everyone's invited, the Me Too movement, that sort of behavior it's not the norm anymore. And so there isn't the job stability there that white men once enjoyed. It's not now. There are people who are more qualified who are getting the jobs. Now,
so what you're really saying is this is a counter revolution, which brings to the point that I'm going to make here about, because I know how when people feel threatened, when people feel like it's the same with culture, it's the same with gender, it's the same with religion. It's whenever sort of people feel as if their space, their thing has been taken from them, there is that sense of kind of that almost conservative thing of like fighting the rearguard action to maintain our masculinity, which is under attack. The same goes for, you know,
desperation.
Yes, and Paul and I understand that the psychology of this quite well, because it's that idea of these people are taking from us. They've taken our manhood from us. They've taken our power from us. And I've spoken to some young men who keep quoting to me that they're a sigma, they're an alpha, they're a beta. And I'm going, what? I'm like, and all of a sudden they are like, you know, I'm reclaiming what's been taken from me. There's a grieving process and almost like a strange brew of not recognizing that they still have a lot of power, but they are feeling powerless, and they're feeling they're reclaiming their power.
But it also comes out as anger, Brent, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's frustration, anger,
but frustration, and exactly. And you know, people like Andrew Tate. That's what he's saying. He's saying to these young lads, you know, society doesn't care what you have to say. Men's voices aren't listened to anymore, and so this kind of male extremism, these men's rights activists, and all that lot, all these toxic male influencers, they're recognizing that there are many boys feeling kind of disenfranchised, a little bit lost, and a little bit confused, and they're exploiting that. And what they're telling them is, no, we need to go back to 1957. You know, we need to go back to talking to women like they're inferior. We need to go back to being aggressive in every kind of interaction that we have. We need to go back to being obsessed with demonstrating our power and exerting our power. And that's what we need to do. And do you know what? If you're a 15-year-old kid, I kind of get it. You know, I think it is difficult. I think it's difficult to be a man. I think it's far more difficult to be a woman. I'll always say that. But, you know, if I hold a door open for someone, can I do that? Can I not do that? Now, I'm actually happy as an adult to deal in grey areas. I'm happy to navigate life and realise that there's things I can no longer do. There's some stuff I should say. There's some stuff I shouldn't. But when you're a 15-year-old kid, you know, nuance isn't something that's easy to deal with. So, it's really confusing because people are telling me I need to talk about my emotions. That's what mum and dad are telling me. That's what my teachers are telling me. But when I do talk about my emotions, all my mates are taking the mick out of me. But I'll tell you what,
Matt,
so what Andrew Tate does, he says, get rid of the grey areas, lads. He says, nail your flags to the mast of misogyny. There's no grey areas there. All right. You can be sexist, you can grope women, but as long as you keep doing it and you stick true to that, you're going to be okay. You know, so these ideologies, what they do is essentially they eradicate the grey areas.
Yeah. And I think there is something of that. I mean, there is that vacuum, and everything and anything fills a vacuum. And if that fella's out there, he'll fill it for those young boys. Matt, when I was growing up, and I'm pretty sure when Brent was growing up too, and I mean, you'll see the Northern Irish connection. We had checks and balances that stopped toxic masculinity. They were called
our Irish grandmothers.
They were called mothers. Right?
And grandmothers.
And grandmothers, yes. And if you tried, you know, to overstep any boundary, even to be any way kind of disrespectful or anything towards your sister, you were put in your box. And that is how you learned. And I'm not saying it's the only way. And obviously I'm exaggerating a little bit for effect there. But the question I'd like to ask you is, you know, teachers will always pick up issues. But is this not something that children should be coming to school with? Parents should be teaching respect, manners, giving a whole sense of purpose and meaning to their sons. Should that not be happening in homes?
Of course it should be happening. But what if at home mum is being beaten up by dad? Or what if at home dad talks about every woman that appears on the television, you know, on EastEnders or on the Olympics, whatever they're watching? What if dad just talks about the women that he sees on TV as if they're objects? You know, like, with all the best will in the world, of course, teachers wouldn't have to do anything because parents would be doing it all. But the reality is, of course, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. And also, you know, people often accuse me of having a go at men all the time. I have a go at men a lot, or certain men. Yeah, I do. But women can perpetuate these negative ideas of masculinity as well, you know. And so, you know, it sounds like you two were lucky to have mothers who taught you to respect.
I would probably like to intercede in that and say that my mother is 4'11". And when the British government talks about terrorism, the first thing I think about is my grandmother, who was 4'11". And my grandmother raised 6 children, pretty much in abject poverty, like Angela's ashes. And my own Irish sweet mother, all I'm going to say to you, she's got a tongue so short it's got a hedge. So we toxic masculinity. We'd like to know what masculinity is. Full stop. We weren't allowed. Any thoughts of masculinity were shot down to bloody pieces. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Or was it go away and catch yourself on? Who do you think you are? You're taking down a peg quite a lot. I mean, you got too cocky in yourself. You were taking down. But don't get me wrong. There was parts of our society we're quite close, and there was things that did happen. There's alcohol, obviously gambling. There's always situations like that. But there was a regulation within the community, and pretty much the community policed itself in certain ways. And that's I think supposed to be breaking down where I don't think people have the same networks. And it goes back to the saying about, you know, my mother was there when I came home, you know, but dad worked. Mom was there when I came home. I could also go to my grandmother's. I had a lot more contact time with parents. I think some of the children are lonely and lost. I think there's a vacuum. They're not sitting at the dinner table. Their parents are working 2 and 3 jobs. We're seeing a lot of what we call the working poor. I'm working class. I grew up in a housing estate, but my parents always insisted at 6 o'clock we had dinner and we watched the news. Usually, what was going on, you know, and that was family time. And we watched all the game shows together. David Attenborough, and we just had that connection with people. My dad is my role model. My father always said to me, and again, his masculinity is sometimes a little toxic. Don't get me wrong, because of a certain generation, which I've had to call out with him. But he did always turn around and respect his mother and respect my mother. And he always said to me, son, you can have many wives, many girlfriends, and many lovers, but you only ever have one mother. Of which my usual response was, well, thank God for that. I can only cope with one. Jesus, Mary and sweet Joseph. Any more than really one, I'm dead, you know. But there is that. I think there's a cultural thing now. And I don't know, it's pornography, it's movies. And I'm sounding very old-fashioned, socially conservative here, and I'm not. But you look at the video games, you look at the access these children have at a very early age to all the social media, the music videos. There's so much being borrowed that they're being overloaded, aren't they, with those kind of messages of this is how you treat a woman, this is how you treat people.
I think pornography. You mentioned pornography there. I think that's I think that has a huge role to play in the way that actually research has shown that viewers of pornography are more, you know, at a young age are more likely to objectify women. And interestingly, that's female viewers of pornography as well. So young female teenagers who are watching pornography are also more likely to objectify women as well. And you know, but you know, look, you know, the last government, they're saying absolutely do not discuss pornography with kids. You know, this new PSHE or relationships and sex education guidance, and all the furore and she came on the telly and she was acting like teachers are going into schools, you know, saying, "Yeah, kids, buy this is a sex toy you should buy and try out," and all this. It's absolute rubbish. You know, teachers, in my experience, you know, we want to do the best by kids, and I think pornography education, Brent, in reaction to what you just said, is essential. I think kids are watching it. The majority of kids have watched pornography. I think in the UK, the average age of the first time seeing pornography is 11 years old. Right? Yeah, we can't just ignore it. We need to talk about it. And do you know what? I don't want to stigmatize. You know, people find watching naked people, they find it interesting, funny, arousing, right? You know, people have done for centuries, you know, 2,000 years. We can't stigmatize the watching of pornography, but instead what we do need to do is let kids know that what you're seeing is not real life. And that's the problem, because sadly, too many boys and girls are watching pornography and they're seeing slapping, biting and choking, and they're thinking that that's what sex actually looks like. Now, sex might look like that between two consenting adults who are in a relationship where they both agree that that's something that they both enjoy and there's safe words involved and blah-de-blah-de-blah. But when you've got 16-year-old lads slapping 16-year-old girls during sex or choking, which does happen, that's a real problem. And that is because we're not talking to boys and girls about pornography, and we're not making them.
We're going to run out of time, but I do want to ask you the sort of connecting question, which is, how do we go from all of that to what we saw on the streets with young men, but also some young women? I mean, there was women involved. There was a 42-year-old woman who's been in my local area had a spit hood had to put on her because she was spitting at the police. And you think, 42-year-old woman probably got children and probably got children who might be teaching. You know, a few people toxic femininity, not toxic masculinity. There's more to it, isn't it? How do we draw the connection to what's been happening in the last couple of days?
Do you know what, Brent? A lot of people have said to me recently, over the past 2 days, that there's lots of women involved. I don't actually think there are many women involved. I think women they stand out more. So when you watch Sky News or whatever, the women stand out. If you actually look at a shot of 100 protesters or rioters, right, the majority they are still men. They are men. And the problem for me is ignorance, and they've been let down, you know, and that's not to excuse their behaviour. But what we really need to do, particularly with white working class boys, we need to make those boys feel from the moment they turn up at school, as in secondary school at 11 years old or primary school, we need them to feel that education is for them, regardless of their background, regardless of what their mum and dads do. You know, the only measure of success isn't going to university. So when we start doing assembly saying, right, you lot, you need to do well in your GCSE so you can go to university. Well, 50% of your cohort ain't interested in going to university. So the moment you start talking about success of being university attendance, you've written them off. No, you've got to make every single kid in that school, regardless of their prior attainment, regardless of their prior behaviour, regardless of who their mum is and who their dad is and who their brother is or whatever, regardless of the estate, you need to make them feel that they have value, that they are valued, and that they can show their value in their educational setting. And that...
Do you think it's a pride issue? Do you think that people have lost pride in who they are, pride in themselves, pride in their community, pride in the being? Because for me, I'm proud to be a father. As a man, my greatest achievement is being a dad, being a father.
Yeah.
But you see, that's what my values were instilled within me. My cousins are the same. My background is the same. And yes, being educationally successful was important to me as a working class kid. I'm a kid who came through the housing estate, but that was drummed into me, and it was reinforced at school. Suppose what you're saying is that schools need to work twice as hard because you're not getting that reinforcement from home. The problem we've got in education as well, you know, is we're judged on numbers. We're judged on data. We're not judged on the conscience of the character or the values of the pastoral system is secondary when it comes to getting exams. So we need a structural change. What you're really saying is we need a structural change in education on the purpose of education, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I perhaps I sound, I don't know what you want to call it, progressive or lefty on this. Actually, in terms of how education works, I think I'm kind of pretty traditional. You know, I believe in direct instruction. I believe that every kid should be challenged and given cultural capital, and that there are certain texts, certain things to be studied that have more value than others. I'm actually that way inclined in terms of my pedagogical approach and ideology. However, I do think that results, too many people are thinking about what Ofsted will think and not what kids will think, in my opinion. And there's too many schools where curriculums or specifications or the year is planned around what will happen if Ofsted come in, rather than let's look at the kids in front of us. What do they need? What can they have?
I think you're speaking my language, Matt. I think you're spot on.
Yeah. Matt, a very quick question, because we are nearly out of time. There's a thought going around on Twitter that some schools might want to expel some of these children when they come back in September. What are your thoughts on that? Should a school challenge a child who was rioting? They're caught, they're all on social media. We can prove it was you. What should a school do?
God, I don't know. I mean, I can only say I don't speak for anybody here. I don't speak for my own school. I think that what would you do if a kid at your school has committed an act of public violence? on their own when there isn't a riot going on. I don't want to comment on what I think should happen in terms of sanctions, exclusions. What I do think needs to happen is these kids absolutely cannot just be punished. There needs to be a process of education and discussion, you know. And that's what people like Andrew Tate and that lot are saying. They're telling these boys, society doesn't care what you think. And if all we do is sanction without any sort of discussion or listening or an attempt to understand, we're just feeding into that.
And for me, that what I worry about is that they get driven into the hands of extremists, county lines, and other individuals who will just take advantage of them. Because that's the nature. Education has to be the rescuing factor. If the rescuing factor is not there, if anything, we have to work twice as hard with those children. And again, that does sound quite lefty and everything else. But that's the purpose of education, is that education is society, benefits society. If anything else, we need more people doing what you're doing, Matt, to be honest with you.
If at the end of the day, if they're under 18 and they're in a school, they're a child, aren't they? Mm-hmm. You know, they're a child. It doesn't matter how big and how tough and how violent they've been. They're a child and they need care and support and education. They do need to be told what's right and what they, you know, and I do think that, kids need to be punished if they step out of line, but they do also need care, support, and all the rest of it.
And take the point there on the screen at the minute, yes, that they should be disciplined rather than solely punished. Yeah. You know, I think children have to learn to hate. It's something that's acquired. It's not a natural kind of way of being to hate.
Of course.
So I think, you know, as schools, you know, it's hard enough to teach them things, but we have to unteach them. They have to unlearn the hatred. And then, as you say, I liked what you said, Matt, they need to find things to engage with in schools, and schooling and education needs to be very relevant for them.
Do you know what? If a kid that I taught had been involved in a riot, I know this isn't going to be very popular with teachers, but I guess what I'd be asking myself is,
why?
What did I do, or what have I not done during my time teaching them? Am I in any, is there anything that I let slip? You know, and it might be that, you know, I didn't. And then obviously then you have to look at home, you know, what's going on at home? You know, like why are kids out at night rioting? You know, it's a complex issue, isn't it? But
it's a good question, Matt, but it's a very, and I mean, I watch them here in the evenings on the news, and you look at the streets of Belfast, Northern Ireland, and I do think, I really do think, as a school leader, you know, what did I create there? What should I have done differently? Why do those children not have good values, respect, decency, and so on? Yeah, I think it's a super question. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is hard when I've taught 20 years, and I've known students that I've taught the Holocaust lessons in, and, you know, cried with them, showing them the Holocaust in year 9, and then a couple of years later seeing their social media, and then seeing their anti-Semitic and racist social media, and thinking, what could I do? I've given them everything I can, but I cannot control who they are friends with. The fact they go to certain football matches, go to a certain part of a football stadium. It's only so much in your control that you can do, but it hurts. I can tell you, it really hurts, because you feel you've lost one. You feel that you've done more, but that's the best feeling, though. At least that you are feeling as if you've made the attempt. Surely it's better to have tried, and then maybe somewhere along the line, I've noticed that where we lose people for a while, then maybe 10 years down the line, they come full circle. I've seen people redeem themselves. I've seen people redeem themselves later on in life. It's like the American History X thing, isn't it? Where they sort of go full circle. There's so many good stories of people. You plant the seed, and even though that seed may not germinate straight away, you could plant that seed for 20 years down the line. It may take a terrible turn, but you plant that seed that somewhere along the line it does bear fruit, but it doesn't always bear fruit straight away. And that's what you might be doing with these workshops. You may plant the seed which doesn't germinate straight away, you know. Who knows?
I'm
20
so
years
glad you said that, Brent. So much of what I do, you know, when I talk about masculinity and all the rest of it, obviously cancel culture, you know, I do believe that men can change. I believe that bad men can become good men, and I believe that bad boys can become good boys. And I guess what we've got to do is give people opportunities to
redeem themselves
for redemption, you know, and also actually accept redemption. You know, how long do we punish people for the things that they've done once they've served their time, or you know, it's easy. Again, it's easy for me to say that I'm not necessarily a victim of any sort of horrible crime, but I like to believe that, because if we don't believe that men can change, why bother? You know, why bother? I talk about toxic masculinity. I often compare it to alcoholism. You know, I've you know, back in the past in my own life with addictions and stuff, I never chose to call myself an alcoholic, because if I'm an alcoholic for the rest of my life, why even get sober? You know, I have to believe that I can get out of my alcoholism, or I can get out of this. And I do believe that lads and men and boys can become better. I do believe that. And
but it's not the purpose of education, isn't it? You make mistakes, you learn from it, you evolve. You make mistakes, you learn from it, you evolve. That's life, isn't it? That's, you know, there we are. I was expelled at 14, spent 30 years teaching ethics here, right?
No better example.
Oh dear. But you know, we've all made, that's the point. You have to leave the door open for the redemption, and that's hard sometimes, because society wants a lot of these young kids punished, don't they? They want, you know, they want the cane brought back, they want the book thrown at them, but they never look at the root causes of it, and they condemn people far too quick. And don't get me wrong, or sometimes people may make choices. They've got to live with the consequences too. They have to live with the consequences. There has to be those consequences.
And I'm happy with throwing the book at them and making people stand up and be held accountable. But concurrently, or running alongside that, there needs to be a process of you're being punished for this, because you've messed up and you've done something wrong. But also, you need to know this. I'm going to teach you this stuff. I'm going to expose you to this experience. I'm going to, you know, and I want you to learn, and I want you to show me that you're trying to be better, you know, and I'm going to support you in that.
Matt, let me tell you a little bit about our show. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbooks.com to explore the full range of titles. And if you use the code JCTTR2425, you'll get 20% off your order.
Still get my emails from John Catt during the holidays, so we'll have to check out what's on their list. But no, Matt, I mean, I think it's very brave. I think the fact you're doing it for free, I think nothing but kudos to you, because it was interesting. I was reading through the lines. A lot of people were like, "Are you legit? Are you okay to come up from Surrey?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's fine." And there was a bit of trepidation from some people of like, what does this guy want? And I got the sense that people were, all right, if you want to do this, go on ahead. And I thought, it's just interesting that people always think that people do things not altruistic, because you're doing this out of altruism. You know what I mean? There was a little bit of what's the catch? You know what I mean? Come on, what's the catch? And but that's what we do as teachers, aren't we? We this is the essence of who we are. We do things altruistically, because sometimes deep down, when it comes down to it, we'd like to hope that we are making a difference. We'd like to hope that even, I suppose, if one of those kids last week maybe went to your thing, or you said something to them, it could be that change that direction that they make, or they make a better decision and choice, isn't it? It's about making better choices, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
And I was even thinking, you know, if Matt ran his workshops and the teachers in the schools saw it, you know, it would really strengthen their resolve maybe to do something. Because I think meeting children coming back from a summer of rioting is going to be very difficult for some teachers. Imagine if you're an ethnic minority teacher and your school management is telling you to go in and do A, B, and C. And I mean, if you're one of those children, or you're children who's been affected by this, you know, sitting there could be difficult. But I think you, Matt, would give people a lot of confidence that it can be done, you know, with skill, with capability, and it can be effective. There can be good outcomes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, look, at least you get to say you tried.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You know.
You know what I mean? And it's better. It's all right having people saying, "Well, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it?" But you're doing something about it, so it's better to at least have a go. And I'm sure you'll take the feedback. Some of the feedback, obviously, we put up some of the feedback was saying, "Well, teaching about toxic masculinity may have forced them to go the other way." But then again, you have to have the conversation. Either way we go with this, the conversation has to be had, doesn't it? So.
Come back at Halloween and tell us how it went.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Yeah, it looks like I'm going up to Liverpool. I think I've got 4 or 5 schools. I'm going to try and do 5 schools in a day. Go in there, have a chat, have a bit of a laugh, and hopefully, I sound like David Brent, but have a chat and be entertaining, and hopefully they'll get something from it.
Fantastic. Well, next week we don't have an education tonight, but the week after will be our results night, our annual results night, where hopefully we can share some data and some insights into what's going on with the exam systems, and obviously get some sort of inside line, a couple of guests on to see what we think, what the results mean, and get some of the stories of some of the successes and obviously some of the issues regarding it. So that will be our results special on the 22nd. I'm on holidays next week, and I'm sure Paul isn't going to enjoy the weather in Northern Ireland.
I want some of that weather back that you took away.
I took it back to England with me. Sorry about that. You keep on watching the news and you're going like, England's got 27 degrees. Why is it 13 degrees and raining? North Atlantic current. I also like consider the North Atlantic current. But thank you, Matt. And thank you, Paul, and thank you to our sponsors, Joe and Kat, as well, for the fantastic sponsorship of this show. And thank you, of course, to Daniel as well, who was our earlier guest on the EU. And we've run over a little bit, but you can't cut short a conversation like this.
No, that's very important.
So thank you and good night.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Matt.
Full of outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused